Most people around the world know the country of Nepal for one thing: Everest, the summit of the world. That photograph on the poster, that bucket list mountain, and the fact that it's used as a superlative for anything remotely challenging. But despite the grandeur of this epic mountain, it kinda steals the spotlight from the rest of Nepal. Just knowing Nepal for Everest strips it of almost everything that makes it even more remarkable. Because Nepal is so much more than Everest. Surprisingly, it's a geographically diverse country. In the span of only 200 kilometers, the land rises from the subtropical lowlands to the highest point on the planet. That is an elevation gain of nearly 9 kilometers. In those 200 kilometers, you pass through several different climate zones, from alpine tundra to jungles, from monsoon forest with elephants and rhinos through terraced hillsides and cloud forests, and through high-altitude grasslands and glacial valleys. So let's today talk about the true geography of Nepal in all its glory. So when we take a look at Nepal on a map, the first thing we'll notice is the shape: a long, narrow rectangle. It's oriented east to west, roughly 900 kilometers long and 200 kilometers wide. To the south is a long open border with India, and to the north is the Tibetan Plateau, the roof of the world. What this means is that Nepal is landlocked, completely surrounded by just two countries. For a nation of over 30 million people, this geographical reality has profound consequences. Most trade, most imports, and all access to the sea must pass through India, or to a much lesser extent, through the long and difficult routes into China. In terms of its size, it covers about 147,000 square kilometers, about the same size as neighboring Bangladesh. By area, it's small, but by topographic range, it's extraordinary. Home to 8 of the world's 14 peaks over 8,000 meters, including Everest, Kanchenjunga, Lhotse, Makalu, Cho'oyo, Dholagiri, Manaslu, and Annapurna, all epic peaks. No other country on Earth has 8,000ers, those being peaks over 8,000 meters high. But like I mentioned previously, Nepal is a lot more than the mountains. The Himalayas that run across the country are just the northern third of Nepal. The country is usually divided into 3 rough horizontal zones running east to west: the Tarai lowlands in the south, the foothills of the Himalayas in the center, and the tall Himalayas in the north. Each zone is a different world, different climate, different ecology, and different culture, which means to understand Nepal, you have to understand all 3. So let's do that, starting at the bottom, the Tarai. Now, most people's mental image of Nepal begins somewhere in the high hills. You may have seen images of prayer flags strung between peaks, or monasteries climbing to cliff tops. But the Tarai doesn't fit that image. It's the flat southern strip of Nepal, a narrow plain sitting between the Himalayan foothills to the north and the Indian border to the south. It is the northern continuation of the Great Indo-Gangetic Plain, one of the most fertile and densely populated agricultural landscapes on Earth. In Nepal, it is roughly 30 to 50 kilometers wide and extends the full length of the country, east to west. Elevations in this region are low, mostly between 60 and 300 meters above sea level. The climate is subtropical, hot summers but cool winters, and a monsoon season from June to September that dumps enormous quantities of rain. This region can feel oppressively humid in summer, with temperatures regularly exceeding 40 degrees Celsius. But this climate produces extraordinary biological richness. This region is home to Chitwan National Park, one of the finest wildlife areas in all of Asia. It protects a large remnant of the subtropical grasslands and riverine forests that once covered this entire region. Here lived the one-horned rhinoceros, a species that came perilously close to extinction in the 20th century, but has made a remarkable recovery in Nepal's protected areas. Also here we find Bengal tigers and the extremely rare gharials, one of the strangest looking crocodilian species on Earth. Sloth bears and leopards also call this area home. Now surprisingly, Nepal is one of the few countries in the world where tiger populations are actually growing. A census conducted in 2022 recorded over 350 wild tigers in the country, nearly double the number of a decade earlier. It is one of the genuine conservation success stories of our era. This region is also Nepal's breadbasket. Despite covering only about 17% of the country's land area, it produces roughly half of Nepal's agricultural output. There's rice, wheat, sugarcane, and lentils. They grow here in the rich alluvial soil deposited over millennia by rivers flowing south of the Himalayas. This region of Nepal is home to the Madhesi people. They make up about 30% of the country's population and are predominantly Hindu. Now the Tarai is where Nepal meets India. And for the majority of the population here, this is not really a border checkpoint, but more of a porous way of living. Many communities straddle the border. Families are divided by it. Languages, customs, and religious practices flow across it. Now let's move north. Between the flat Tarai and the soaring Himalayas lies a part of Nepal where most Nepalis have lived for most of its history, the Middle Hills. This is a zone of complex and folded terrain. There's ridges and valleys running roughly east to west, cut across by rivers flowing south from the mountains towards India. Elevations here typically range from 300 meters to about 3,000 meters, with most settlements clustered between 1,000 and 2,500 meters, high enough to escape the Tarai's heat, but low enough to still grow some crops. The landscape of the Middle Hills is defined, above almost anything else, by one feature: terraces. Almost every hillside in the inhabited Middle Hills region has been terraced, cut into horizontal steps to create flat agricultural land on slopes that would otherwise be impossible to farm. Now this practice of terracing in this region has been accumulating for over 2,000 years. Generations of farmers cutting into the hillsides, building retaining walls of stone, channeling water from one terrace to the next. The result is one of the most interesting looking agricultural landscapes on Earth. Rice is the staple crop here. Where water can be brought to irrigate the terraces, paddy rice dominates. On drier slopes and higher elevations, there's millet, maize, wheat, and buckwheat. The agricultural calendar is dictated entirely by the monsoon here. The arrival of the rains in June triggers planting. The end of the monsoon in September and October brings harvest. Within the Middle Hills, one place above all others has defined Nepali history and culture: the Kathmandu Valley. The Kathmandu Valley is a broad, flat basin sitting at around 1,300 meters above sea level, roughly oval in shape, surrounded by hills on all sides. It is, geologically speaking, a former lake bed, making it extraordinarily fertile. The valley is home to Kathmandu, Lalitpur, and Bhaktapur, three ancient cities that were, until the 18th century, three separate rival kingdoms. The Kathmandu Valley today contains 7 UNESCO World Heritage Sites, all within roughly 30 kilometers of each other. Now the valley's position also made it a trade crossroads, sitting in the Middle Hills between the Indian Plains and the Tibetan Plateau. It was a natural stopping point on the ancient trade routes carrying salt, wool, and grain south from Tibet and cotton and spices north from India. Newar merchants controlled this trade for centuries and grew extraordinarily wealthy. That wealth built the famous temples in this region. Today, Kathmandu is the capital of Nepal and home to nearly 1.5 million people in the city proper, and with a greater valley approaching 3.5 million. In its chaotic, traffic-choked, smog-hazed, and endlessly alive city. The city core survives alongside what looks like endless concrete sprawl. But the beauty of the city is that on clear days, if you look to the north, the Himalayas are right there, towering over the city of Kathmandu. An epic reminder that this busy, complicated city sits at the base of the tallest mountain system on the planet. The Middle Hills are cut through by a series of major river systems: the Koshi, the Gandaki, and the Karnali. All of them drain from the Himalayas southward through the hills and into the Tarai and then eventually the Ganges River. These rivers are among the most powerful on Earth in terms of sediment load. They carry millions of tons of eroded mountain material downstream every year, building the great alluvial plains of northern India. For the people of the hills, these rivers are both lifelines and barriers. They provide water, fish, and in some places hydroelectric power. But the deep gorges they carve, have historically isolated communities from each other. A village on one side of the gorge might only be a kilometer from a village on the other side, as the crow flies, but several hours of descent and ascent on foot. This geographical fragmentation has produced Nepal's extraordinary ethnic and linguistic diversity. Over 120 languages are spoken in a country the size of New York State. And now we move to the Himalayas. Now, to understand the Himalayas, you need to look at the geologic history of this region. And for that, you need to start about 100 million years ago. At that time, what is now the Indian subcontinent was not attached to Asia at all. It was an island, a vast, northward drifting landmass. Over tens of millions of years, the Indian subcontinent drifted north. Then, around 50 million years ago, India collided with Asia. The seafloor sediments that had accumulated in it were compressed and crumpled upwards, and the collision, which actually is still ongoing, began building the Himalayas. The Indian plate is still pushing north. The Himalayas are still rising, about 5 millimeters per year. Nepal sits directly on this collision zone. The ground beneath Kathmandu is being compressed, uplifted, and periodically shattered by earthquakes that release the accumulated stress of two continents grinding against each other. And this is exactly what caused the 2015 Gorkha earthquake in Nepal. It was magnitude 7.8, and it killed nearly 9,000 people, destroyed hundreds of thousands of homes, and triggered avalanches on Everest that killed climbers at base camp. It was a reminder, brutal and sudden, that Nepal does not sit on stable ground. It sits on one of the most geologically active zones on the planet. And here is something that you might find interesting. On the summit of Mount Everest is limestone, marine limestone, full of fossils of tiny sea creatures, meaning the highest point on Earth was actually at the bottom of a tropical sea 450 million years ago. Tectonic forces lifted it nearly 9 kilometers. But Everest is just but one mountain. Nepal is home to 8 of the world's 14 peaks above 8,000 meters. Each one is distinct in its character, in its difficulty, and in the history of human attempts on it. There is Annapurna in the west of Nepal. It was the first 8,000er ever summited by French climbers Maurice Herzog and Louis Le Chanel, and it was the first mountain above 8,000 meters that any human being had ever stood on, and it remains, statistically, the most dangerous of all the 8,000ers. Its death rate is among the highest of any major Himalayan peak. Nearby is Dhaulagiri, also in western Nepal. It rises so dramatically from the surrounding terrain that early European surveyors briefly considered it as the highest mountain in the world, while far to the east of Nepal sits Kanchenjunga, the third highest mountain in the world at 8,586 meters. It is worshipped as a sacred deity by the Sikkimese people, and by tradition, climbers stop a few meters short of the actual summit out of respect, a remarkable act of restraint at the edge of one of humanity's greatest physical challenges. But the Himalayas are not uninhabited. People have lived in these mountains for thousands of years, and their adaptations to extreme altitude are among the most remarkable in human biology. These Sherpa people, who predominantly reside in the Khumbu and the Solo regions of Nepal, migrated from eastern Tibet roughly 500 years ago and settled in the high valleys of northeast Nepal. They are famous worldwide for their role in Himalayan mountaineering, but their geographical significance goes far beyond guiding expeditions. They developed a civilization at elevations that would debilitate most humans. Sherpa communities have been in this environment long enough to develop genetic adaptations to altitude, including a variant of the EPAS1 gene that allows their bodies to use oxygen more efficiently at low partial pressures. Above the settlements, the landscape becomes one of the most severe on Earth. The high Himalayan valleys and passes are home to glaciers, thousands of them, covering an estimated 5,000 square kilometers of Nepal. And these glaciers are the source of the rivers that sustain hundreds of millions of people downstream in Nepal, India, Bangladesh, and Pakistan. The Himalayan glacier system is sometimes called the third pole after Antarctica and the Arctic. Now let's leave behind the high peaks of the Himalayas and talk a little bit about Nepal's climate. And you cannot talk about Nepal's climate without mentioning the monsoon. The South Asian monsoon is one of the most powerful atmospheric systems on Earth. It is driven by the differential heating between the Indian Ocean and the Asian landmass. In summer, the land heats faster than the ocean, causing the air over the Indian subcontinent to rise. This causes moist air from the Indian Ocean to take its place. When the air hits the Himalayas, the greatest topographic barrier on Earth, it's forced upward. It cools and releases its moisture as rainfall. Enormous, torrential, and possibly months-long rainfall. The monsoon typically arrives in Nepal in June and lasts through September. And in that 4-month window, roughly 80% of Nepal's annual precipitation falls. Rivers that were quiet mountain streams become raging torrents. Terraced hillsides green up almost overnight. But the monsoon is not uniform across Nepal. The Middle Hills and the Tarai region receive more than 2,000 millimeters of rain annually, and over 80% of that is during the monsoon. However, the complex topography of the Middle Hills region means that there's a lot of local variation. But the rain shadow effect behind the Himalayas is dramatic. The high valleys of northern Nepal, sheltered by the main Himalayan range, receive only a fraction of the monsoon rainfall. Places like Mustang and Dolpo, upper valleys tucked behind the mountains, receive an almost Central Asian dryness, receiving less than 200 millimeters of rain per year. And this dry, arid region is home to one of Nepal's most extraordinary places. This is Lowlands, the walled city of Upper Mustang. It sits in a desert at 3,840 meters. Its mud brick architecture and Tibetan Buddhist culture feel entirely different from the rest of Nepal. The monsoon also defines Nepal's economy. Agriculture, still the primary livelihood for the majority of Nepalis, depends entirely on monsoon timing and intensity. A late monsoon or a weak one means poor harvests and food insecurity. A particularly violent monsoon could mean flooding, landslides, and the loss of everything a family has built. Nepal sits almost exactly at the point where the monsoon hits the Himalayas hardest, which means the stakes of every year's rains can be enormous. Now that we've explored the physical geography of Nepal, let's talk about the cities of Nepal. What are they like? And where are they located? We already spoke a little bit about Kathmandu, but what other large cities are in Nepal? Well, Nepal's second largest city is Pokhara. It sits in a broad valley like Kathmandu at around 820 meters above sea level. It's lower and warmer than Kathmandu, and its defining feature is probably Phiwa Lake, a large blue-green lake whose southern shore has become the spine of Nepal's tourism industry outside of the Everest region. To the north of Pokhara lies the Annapurna Massif, which rises to over 8,000 meters. So just imagine on a clear morning standing at the lakeside of Phiwa Lake, looking to your north, and you see the massive Annapurna. And because of this proximity, Pokhara is actually the gateway to the Annapurna Circuit and the Annapurna Sanctuary, two of the world's most celebrated trekking routes. Hundreds of thousands of trekkers pass through the city each year, either setting out into the hills or returning from them. But Pokhara is not just a gateway for Annapurna. It's an actual city with over 600,000 people, and it has a different character than the larger Kathmandu, less congested, greener, and significantly wetter. Pokhara receives more rainfall than almost anywhere else in Nepal, and the result of this are lush hills, full rivers, and dramatic waterfalls. Beyond Kathmandu and Pokhara, there are other cities, particularly in the Tarai region near the Indian border. Here lies Biratnagar, home to jute mills, sugar factories, and a growing manufacturing sector. There is also Birgunj, the main gateway for goods crossing from India into Nepal. Now, this city processes an enormous proportion of the country's imports and has grown into a substantial commercial city entirely on the back of its border position. But Nepal's cities are not yet dominant in the way that cities of India and China or Southeast Asia are, but the trajectory is clear. Nepal is urbanizing faster than most people realize, and the cities being built now, how they are planned, and how they manage their growth will shape much of Nepal's future. So we started this video talking about a mountain, or rather the reduction of an entire country to a single iconic peak. But like I said, Nepal cannot be defined by just one mountain. It is so much more than that. It is a country and a land that compresses much of Earth's environment into a small region. From tropical lowlands to the Earth's highest peaks. It tells the story of a collision between continents still unfolding underneath this beautiful country. It tells the story of people who learned to live in a place that most people would not even survive in. Its resourceful people terraced impossibly steep slopes and built cities on ancient lake beds. Despite being landlocked, earthquake-prone, and dependent on monsoon rains, the people of this country carved out their unique culture. So let's not just limit Nepal to Everest or the Himalayas. It is so much more than that, and I hope this video helped you realize that. And as always, if you like content like this, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and let me know in the comments below if you want me to continue making videos about different countries and their geography. And thank you to each and every one of you who's followed me over the past year and a half. I've now passed 100,000 subscribers, and when I first started this channel, I had no idea that I'd be getting here. So thank you to each and every one of you, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.